This video is brought to you by John Robson Guitar Tuition. If you enjoy the content, please consider supporting the channel by enrolling on a course, purchasing some guitar lessons or a t-shirt, or you can join my Patreon. Now, on with the show. Hello chaps, welcome once again to John Robson Guitar Tuition. As always, I do hope you're well. Now then, this is another one of these videos where I sit and blether on a bit about an album that I love. And today we're looking at this one. Yes indeed, Gary Moor's 1990 opus, Still Got the Blues. Let me give you a little bit of background from my perspective of how I got into this album. Basically, as a fresh-faced 17-year-old who'd moved away from home for the first time in 1984 to go to college, I ended up sharing a dormitory with a lad who had this album, Victims of the Future, Gary's, at the time, latest album. And it was the first time I'd heard Gary Moore. I wasn't really, I discovered rock music a little bit early than that, probably when I was, 11, 12 years old via Since You've Been Gone by Rainbow and, as I said yesterday, Living After Midnight by Judas Priest. So I was beginning to appreciate rock, but it was still unexplored territory for me in a lot of ways, let's say. I wasn't really into all of the kind of, fast guitar hero kind of stuff like Van Halen, rest in peace, and all that sort of stuff that was beginning to come out. It just didn't seem particularly melodic to me. But then when I heard this album, I don't know, I just heard something else in there. There was just something more to it. I found his playing more melodic, and there was much more melody and soulfulness going on than there was like a big ego trip or anything. That was my perception of it anyway. And I ended up buying the album, and I think it was for a birthday or Christmas or something. I got this VHS cassette, Gary Moore, Emerald Isles Live in Ireland. And it was just basically a video made on a tour of Ireland. And Phil Lynott comes out and does a guest spot. I wonder if you can guess which song they did. Indeed, Parisian Walkways. But there's some footage of them jamming backstage, and Gary and Phil are jamming some really, really good blues. And I thought, because I was like massively into blues, I thought that'd be cool if Gary would do a blues album. But sadly, it wasn't to be. The next few albums were just more of the same kind of commercial pop rock kind of stuff, which was okay. Wild Frontier was a good album, and After the War wasn't bad. But I was still kind of thinking, I wish he'd do a blues album. And then one Friday evening in 1990, I was listening to the Friday rock show on the BBC, as you did back in those days, and Tommy Vance played a track called King of the Blues, and he says, this is a track from Gary Moore's brand new album, and it's all kind of old blues stuff and new blues material that he's written, and he's got a couple of guest artists coming on, George Harrison does a turn, and Albert King and Albert Collins. I thought, finally, Gary, it's took you a few years, but you've done the blues album I was always waiting for. So obviously I got that album, and, I had that bus ride home that I remember really well from various kind of albums where you've been into the town and you've bought the album and you're sitting on the bus and you're devouring the sleeve notes on the album. You just kind of can't wait to get the CD home and put it in the player and put your headphones on and just kind of see what it is that you've bought, or listen to what it is that you've bought. So anyway, got home, as I said, headphones on, and the first track, Moving On. It's just a great opener for the album. It's up-tempo, foot stomping kind of blues rock. And it was the first time I'd heard Gary play slide as well. And it's like, that was something that he seemed to do on a lot of albums back then. There was always, every album that I listened to, there was always, I've never heard him do that before, and that was the first time I heard him play slide. And then we move on to Pretty Woman. dearie me. I mean, the word I've typed here in these notes that I'm referring to is explosive. Capital letters, 3 exclamation marks underlined. I just love the contrast between Gary and Albert King. You know, 2 different styles of playing, because it is an Albert King song originally. And, you know, Gary's Les Paul through a Marshall tone just kind of batters your ears, and then Albert comes in with his more kind of restrained, subtle kind of thing. It's a great juxtaposition of tones, and, you know, fantastic playing. Then we move on. Another highlight from the album for me is the title track, Still Got the Blues. This is basically Gary just reworking the old Autumn Leaves chord sequence that he'd had, you know, various kind of goes at in the past. I'm thinking of, like, obviously Parisian Walkways, but, you know, way back in the early days of Thin Lizzy, Still in Love with You, and, you know, The Loner. He recycled that chord sequence a few times, and I think this is one of the better versions of it that he did, one of the better treatments he gave it. And as for that massive outro solo, you know, all done in one take, apparently. You know, now there's a guitar player for you. What else have we got? Texas Strut. Yeah, I just love the intro on that, the way it starts off with that quiet sort of thing, kind of with that climbing sixths kind of measure, and then batters you around the lug holes again with that open A chord riff. Fantastic. You know, kind of bit of foot stomping Texas blues. By the way, watch out for a solo analysis video that I'm going to be doing on that very track very soon. Then we get into the more kind of reflective sort of parts of the album. I'm missing some tracks out here. It's not that I don't like them. I'm just kind of going through some highlights, really, of things that, you know, my personal favourites, really. We get into the more reflective sort of stuff as the years go passing by. I mean, this is Gary just expertly and beautifully playing a slow minor blues in a very sort of Peter Green kind of manner. Obviously, he played the Greeny Les Paul on this album, various Les Pauls, but you know, this very much does sound like the Greeny Les Paul that he's playing here. It's just soulful, weepy, emotional, raw blues. It's a beautiful piece of guitar playing, and it's, for me, as I say, it's one of the highlights of the album. Then, as well as paying homage to Peter Green, Gary also pays homage to Eric Clapton. This is a barnstorming version of All Your Love, which, if you're a bit of a blues fan, you'll probably know is the opening track to the John Mayall and the Blues Breakers with Eric Clapton, the Beano album, basically. It's the first track on that album, and Gary just kind of, you know, to kind of quote Nigel Tufnell, he cranks it up to 11. It is just a barnstorming version of that tune. You know, not a note out of place. I remember reading a review of the album before I bought it. I think it was in Q magazine, and they said Mr. Moore's guitar playing displays the usual snub-nosed arrogance which is only reined in by his innate taste and sense of melody. Yeah, okay, that's pretty much that track right there. And then, you know, closing the album, Stop Messing Round. Again, this is an old Fleetwood Mac tune, up-tempo blues shuffle, that, you know, is again another homage to Peter Green. And Gary is obviously playing the Greeny Les Paul on this, and just the fluency of his solo. There's nothing particularly flash or kind of twiddly or shreddy on this particular track. But you don't notice. It's just, it's full of guitar solos that you go away humming, and you can just see the smile on his face as he's playing this. You can't, obviously, but you can imagine the smile on his face as he's playing this. He's having a great time, and the band are obviously all kind of really enjoying the groove. And, you know, Paul Gambaccini once said that something about, you can hear sometimes when you're listening to a track, that the players in the studio suddenly realise that they're mining gold, and, you know, that the collective performance just notches up a level. And I hear that on this track, I've got to tell you. the albums that came before Still Got the Blues, I'm thinking of, well, maybe not Wild Frontier, but After the War and Run for Cover. There is a sense on those albums, I think, that you can hear Gary's kind of just phoning it in. He's not really, he's doing the necessary to fulfill his contractual obligations, and I mean, I'm sorry if those are your favourite albums. I don't want to be kind of slagging them off, but for me, there wasn't that passion that you on those albums that you heard on Still Got the Blues. It's he sounds like he's having fun. Basically, it's like. When you see a dog that's been taken to the park and let off the leash, big daft spaniel lolloping along with a big daft grin on its face and its tongue lolling out, having a great time. That's the vibe I get from Gary on this album. There's nothing on it sounds over-rehearsed. There's eye contact you can kind of feel between the musicians, and there's a lot of jamming going on. It's a great, great blues rock album that stands up well against the works of, Johnny Winter, the Allman Brothers, Pat Travers, take your pick. And, 30 years on, it still sounds vibrant, it still sounds fresh, and, I never ever tire of hearing it. The only fault with this album really is that it was a really, really difficult act to follow. And the follow-up album, After Hours, it was okay. But I think that album lacked the spontaneity and, I think Gary, when he decided to do a blues album with Still Got the Blues, I think he was going out on a limb somewhat. I'm not sure that he had the full support of the record company, who I don't think they were into it, but it was a massively successful album, obviously. So then he got the green light to go and maybe spend a bit more money and do the next album. And I don't think the After Hours album was as good as Still Got the Blues by a long shot. Good album, but it wasn't a great album in the way that Still Got the Blues demonstrably is, I think. So there you go, folks. That is why I love this album, Still Got the Blues by Gary Moore. Those are just a few highlights, just a few personal favourites from the album for me. Let me know what you think of the album. I've linked to it down below, so if you've never heard it, then I implore you, go and listen to it. You will be in absolute blues rock guitar heaven, I promise you. So there you go, folks. That's it for today. Hope you've enjoyed the video. If you have, please hit the subscribe button and the notification bell if you haven't already done so. And why not give me a like while you're at it? And it's only Tuesday, but don't forget the live stream on Friday, as you know, 5 p.m. UK time. It's all about the beer and the chat. It's a great way to kick off the weekend. I'd love to see you there. If you want to support the channel, all the links are down there in the description. Thank you so much if you're helping me out in any of those ways, and thank you in advance if you're thinking about doing it. But for now, I'll bid you all a good day and say thank you so much for your time. Thank you for watching. Look after yourselves, folks. Stay well, stay safe, and above all, stay sane. Bye for now.